All right, and we are live. How is everybody doing today? You guys are already in here commenting. Seems like they're trying to chew up remaining reserves. Yeah, that's sort of what we're talking about today, a little bit. Um, Talking about the ability to move reserves around and looking at the battlefield overall and how Kharkov actually impacts that. So yeah, we're going to be definitely talking about that today. How long realistically does Ukraine have? Well, my prediction has been till 2026. I think that's when most of this is going to wrap up. If this doesn't expand into a wider war in Europe, so that's my prediction. How long do they have realistically of fighting at this current pace? I don't think as long as some people expect. Missed attack warnings throughout the whole of Ukraine. Yeah, if you guys don't know right now, there is currently a missile strike ongoing in Ukraine, and we have explosions in Kiev right now. So I'm going to post that. There are MiG 31s airborne. There were Tu 95 bombers airborne. So there is a large scale Russian missile attack ongoing in Ukraine currently. So that is happening. So if you guys see me pop down to my phone, that's what's going on. Yes, Kiev is under attack. Bulliot indeed. Okay. Scott, Brian Berletic keeps recommending you. Yeah, he has said a couple times, I talk with him frequently, that he mentions me and he's referencing me now, which is nice. I'm glad that he likes my page so much. He constantly messages me and talks to me about the posts that we have. We're in a group chat as well, so we're in constant communication. He's a good guy. I definitely recommend going and checking out the new Atlas if you guys don't. He does great work, very level, very balanced, and he presents information appropriately. Oh my God, it's 3 a.m. here, but your live is so good. That is awesome, dude. You know what? Let's get into it. It's early, so let's. I mean, it's early in the podcast, but let's get into it. All right. Welcome everybody. This is episode number 64 of Kalibrated Live. If this is your first time joining me, welcome, welcome, welcome. If you guys don't mind going, subscribing, and liking this YouTube live stream, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Twitter, retweeting, liking it, just giving a comment, doing something to boost it, that helps so much. I appreciate everybody in here. I appreciate everybody watching from around the world. I see Australia. I think we're going to have a lot of people that don't get to regularly watch because this live stream is so late in the day. For me, early in the day for people on the other side of the world. So without further ado, let's get into it. If you guys want more of my content, you can find it on Telegram and Twitter. Those links are in the description of the YouTube video on the live stream. If you're watching on Twitter, you can find all of that information on my page. If you're looking for further information, my DMs are always open. Hit me up. And if you want to support me, the easiest way you guys can do that is through super chats and super thanks on the YouTube live. I will answer questions that are asked through super chats and super thanks. And if you want more content, I have a series called Demonetized that is on my Patreon account. It is exclusive to Patreon members. However, that video series is I want to kind of keep it under wraps because it does have some graphic content. I do go into strikes and stuff and combat footage that we see, and hence why it's called Demonetized. I can't put it on YouTube. Okay, thank you guys for sitting through that with me. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this. Yes, you can always slide into my DMs, guys. They're always open. Come talk, come chat. If you have questions, if you want to say something I said was stupid, please. I love to hear new opinions and new ideas. It helps me form better analysis. All right. We are going over to the map today, everybody. Let me make sure. All right. Yeah. Let's go over to the map. Let me make myself smaller because you don't need to see me. I'm not important here. All right. So in the Kharkov area, As I said, you will not see much action in this area anymore. Ukraine has a manpower advantage, a large manpower advantage, nearly 3-1, according to Ukrainian sources in this region. They are actively counterattacking in the Lipsy area right here. They are also actively counterattacking in the Vovchansk area. This is not what Ukraine wants to do right now. Ukraine does not want to be, Ukraine does not want to have an offensive posture by any means. That's not what they necessarily want. They want to be defensive. They don't want to be expending manpower, equipment. We've seen a lot of artillery systems getting taken out. When you're conducting offensive operations, you have to be aggressive with your positioning. That makes it easier for Russian counter battery fire, drone activity, missile strikes, all of the sort in this region, very close to the Russian border. The Ukrainians are at the very extent of their logistics chains right here on the border. It is hard for the Ukrainians to get into this area because of Russian ISR, artillery, drones in this region. Ukrainian movement is incredibly difficult, whereas the Russians, outside of around 10 kilometers away from the border, experience much easier logistics conditions in terms of Ukrainian deep strikes and stuff like that. We did see a convoy of Russian trucks that was hit by a few FPVs. According to Russian sources, that was a conscript unit that was just waiting they were just, I don't know, moving around. They weren't going to the front line. The trucks were just sitting, and there were actually no injuries because they were just sitting. The trucks were just sitting there, and the guys weren't in the trucks. So a lot of the trucks got hurt, but no conscripts were killed, which is good because those guys are not supposed to be that close to the front. I mean, they can be close to the front, but they're not supposed to be engaged in combat outside of Russia, unless Russia, is at war, which they are currently not. Okay, so Ukrainians are counterattacking here. According to Russian sources, and you can believe this or not, the counterattacks are somewhat mindless and very, very bloody for the Ukrainians. And there are no map changes to either area. The Russians are just holding and allowing the Ukrainians to counterattack. This is becoming a PR nightmare for Ukraine. With the manpower advantage they have here, and with the shell, advantage, I'm not going to say that they have an advantage. They don't necessarily have more shells than the Ukrainians. Than the Russians. Sorry, but they do in this area. They really stabilized the artillery shell starvation in this area. And from the reports we've been getting from Russian sources, the counter battery fire in this region, which it was the strongest, has really, really quieted down. And even the shell expenditure in this area from Ukrainian artillery units has begun to see a pretty large reduction. I don't know if that's because ammunition is being transferred to the Kharkov region. I'm waiting to see reports on Ukrainian artillery activity around this area. What it could be is that Ukraine just got a large shipment of shells and they blew through them in a very, very short period of time, trying to reverse this Kharkov offensive and reverse the Russian gains. Instead of, slightly improving their overall artillery situation, their shell ammunition situation, what they did is they decided to go all in on, the strikes in this area. We've seen a ton of Ukrainian artillery used in this area, as well as trying to prevent the other Russian gains that you can see here on the map that haven't stopped, right? Again, the Pokrovsk direction, you can see every time we come in here, we can see that the Russians continue to advance in this direction. I've said the whole time that this direction is the goal, not saying that Pokrovsk is necessarily the goal, but this southern Donetsk direction right here, and we can just see the movement here is specifically noticeable. You don't see the same thing around New York Toretsk. You see a little bit of it around Chasiv Yar. We've seen some improvements around here for the Russians, but overall, the southern Donetsk direction has seen the most consistent Russian activity in terms of offensive operations since the fall of Avdiivka. So this, I've had a couple of arguments about this now, and I want to make this very clear. I don't know necessarily the Russian goal. I'm going to give you my take on what the Russian goal in this region was, what ended up happening, because I've heard a lot of people say that this is bogged down. The Russians are now bogged down in the Kharkov region. That's not the case at all. If you looked at the force distribution in this area along the Kursk and Belgorod border regions, so Sumy, Chernigov up here. Well, that's not Kursk as much. So just Sumy and Belgorod regions, there were a total of 50,000 Russian combat troops available in this region. That doesn't mean 50,000 offensive assault units. That's not what that means. It means total manpower in this region. So that includes logistics. You have to factor all of that in. At the time of the incursion, we heard that there was about 15 or so thousand Russian troops. We could say just 20, just round it up to 20. So we go on the higher end of the estimation that entered this region. There is no possibility you are reaching Chernihiv, Izum, or Kharkiv in this manner at all. There's no way. 15,000 troops to take Kharkov. There are more Ukrainian troops in the city, let alone the civilians. You can't assault a city with that amount of men. Pretty much what you can do with that amount of men is what we're seeing right here. This level of advance was way bigger than anything we saw elsewhere in Ukraine. Not a lot of this was gray zone too. Like, I'm not saying that the Ukrainians were actively defending this whole area. So the Russians did cross the border. The Ukrainian defenses in this area did actually collapse, and the Russians achieved pretty strong early success with very minimal casualties and not a large force commitment. And now they're just holding this territory as the Ukrainians are working tirelessly trying to reverse this Russian gain that was made into Vovchansk. If you guys don't know, Vovchansk is on the actual first Ukrainian line of defense in the region. So this penetration into this city right here and up to this river line is actually very, very makes the situation very difficult for the Ukrainians. This area has been bombed mercilessly because of the amount of Ukrainian concentration in this area. The Ukrainians are actively fighting in this area of Vovchansk, this western part. However, this is, at least according to Deep State, this is all in the gray zone. So there are probably no stable Ukrainian positions over here, but Russians also don't occupy this area of eastern Vovchansk. Okay, so the goal was not Kharkov. The goal was not Chernihiv. The goal was not Izum. The goal was not the entire Oskol River. The goal was, as was stated by Putin, come in, create a buffer zone, and however you guys want to think about it, whether you want, if you're going to take Putin at face value and that this was just a buffer zone or whatever it is, what it accomplishes is that it pulls so much Ukrainian resource to this region that should be defending, the Kharkov region, the Luhansk region right here on this side of the Oskol, should be defending Seversk, where we've seen Russian movement, and should be defending southern Donetsk and Chasiv Yar. If the Ukrainians lose Chasiv Yar, they're going to be in a very, very, very difficult situation. If the Ukrainians lose or suffer a breakthrough in the southern Donetsk region, they don't have active mobile reserves now to throw at a new Russian offensive in any region because they're bogged down up here in the north. I've seen a lot of people saying that the Russians are the ones getting bogged down in the north. No, the Russians did a small incursion and now are sitting back and enjoying their artillery and aviation advantage, their missile advantage, their drone advantage. The Ukrainians do not have Lancet striking artillery pieces on the Russian side. The Ukrainians do not enjoy massive glide bomb usage where you see, dozens of sorties every day. The Ukrainians are not enjoying constant ballistic missile, strikes that the Russians can call in at any time. Same with a lot of MLRS fire. The Russians have a superiority in every aspect across the entire front line. The Russians are not bogged down here. They're allowing the Ukrainians to do the same exact thing that the Ukrainians have done every single time the Russians have made an advance that affects Ukraine's propaganda abilities. They did the same thing in Severodonetsk and Lysychansk. They fed this grinder and held it for way too long, and then were forced to retreat in a rout. They did the same thing in Bakhmut, where they sat in this grinder for months and months and months. By the way, we got some numbers from Mediazona that talked about the Battle of Bakhmut. It said that of the Wagner personnel, they suffered 20,000 casualties throughout the 6-month Battle of Bakhmut. I believe that includes Soledar as well. Of those 20,000, 2,500 were professional soldiers, and around 18,000 were prisoners that were brought in and were used in the assaults. So even the COPE Ukrainian casualty numbers, when you're talking about how it actually affects the Russian military, was much, 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 much lower than, I mean, it didn't affect the Russian military because it was Wagner, first off, but the overall, in terms of the Russian fighting capability, they lost prisoners, which you can say, you can make comments about using prisoners in war. They were given the option. They could have stayed in prison. They chose to go fight. However you want to argue the moral fortitude of that, the losses for the Russian army were not as significant as the Ukrainians like to play up Bakhmut to be. They pretend like Bakhmut was this massive cemetery for Russians, when in reality, the Ukrainians were forcing themselves down this one supply road into Bakhmut and just being ground. And we know this is true because the complaints about the counteroffensive thereafter, a few months, were that this operation in Bakhmut ate up a ton of Ukraine's offensive capabilities, and the shell shortage arrived after Bakhmut as well, and they've kind of been living with that ever since. So it's all related. Bakhmut was the same as Vovchansk, as the same as Severodonetsk, is the same as Avdiivka, as the same as Chasiv Yar will be, as the same as all of the future battles that we see until Ukraine is completely exhausted. They will not retreat. They will not take a step back. The second they do that, the domestic situation collapses, the foreign support collapses. They only have one option, and that is escalation and forward, right? There is no stepping back. The day that decision comes, things are much, much, much worse than everybody has assumed. But something 11 brilliant battalions. Yeah. There's a clown on Twitter named David, said something about there being 100 battalions in this region, and the Ukrainians were going to take all of this territory back. And they tried. They've been counterattacking a lot. They've been losing a lot. And now David is saying that this is actually a trap for the Russians. Why would the Ukrainians push the Russians out of this area when they can just, use their artillery, which is being annihilated, to kill the Russians at such a pace that the Russians have to push a brigade into this region every day? It's almost not worth talking about. See, when he says it, he has this like pathological belief in it, and he tries to convince you. And when I say it, it just sounds like schizophrenic mumbo jumbo, but that's literally exactly what he has said. I have screenshots. I have a whole folder dedicated to David, and I will publish it one day, and it will be magnificent, because he has had so many horrible takes and nobody holds him to any sort of standard. Bro, I said the crew lived on a ship where the crew lived, and now apparently that is a permanent meme for me. Okay. But this dude said that the third Chechen war was starting, and nobody gives him any shit for that. Okay, let's get to some of the advances. The Russians have advanced in the Luhansk region, very close to the Kharkov region now. Remember, there is this strategic high ground here, so every advance, like we see, like this is a pretty decent advance. for the Russians is very important. It puts the Ukrainians in a worse and worse position, utilizing these few logistic supply roads around the Kupiansk area, the Oskol region. Okay. The Russians advanced into this small town. These aren't even worth calling towns. I don't know what this even is, but this doesn't even look like it has a house. So this whole town. Let me butcher this real fast. Uh, Miseo, that's my Spanish. Zarhiv area and Andriivka, which you can see Andriivka has a small farm. Maybe I don't know if this is in Andriivka, and one house. So yeah, just two little farming communities, basically nothing. But the area is what's more important, not the settlements at all. Okay. Moving down to the Chasiv Yar area. Deep State puts this entire area into the gray zone now. So that is a Ukrainian source, by the way. Deep State is now putting this entire area into the gray zone. It is likely that the Russians will push out and reach the canal very soon. We do have confirmed progress further into these high-rise residential buildings. Again, this entire micro-district canal and everything on this side of the river is practically gone, leveled. So it's just kind of fighting through Stalingrad-esque rubble. And eventually the Ukrainians will be forced out of any remaining positions they have on this side of the river. Okay. That is just a small advance. We kind of see the areas of the front pick up steam and slow down. So now the Chasiv Yar has sort of slowed down. The southern Donetsk area is picking back up again, just pulling, stretching the Ukrainians. The Kupiansk sector is pretty hot too. All right, so now to the Avdiivka front. Almost can't call it the Avdiivka front now because it's like 10 miles away from the actual city. But yeah, you can see how much progress the Russians have made out since the fall of the city. It was something like, oh wait, that's too far. Oops. Something like this has all been captured by the Russians since then. So you can see how much they have extended out from the city. Up to the north, the Russians have pushed into Novo Alexandrivka. The town has been almost completely captured by the Russians. Both Deep State and a couple of the Russian sources I follow confirm this. However, there is still a large Ukrainian fortification right in this area. I made a post about this today. If you follow my Twitter or my Telegram, you would have seen that. But the Ukrainians still occupy this large defensive fortification right here. So control over the town is not quite as important. Once this fortification falls, that's going to be the most significant aspect. Again, we don't have a geolocation, so I haven't added it yet. But the Russians have also pushed out into this field and captured what is the highest point in the region. I'm going to actually take us over to our topographical map. And I will show you guys what I am talking about. Okay, so this is Bakhmut. Don't need that. We need Orchitny right here. You can see here is the high ground, and the Russians have captured the highest point of that high ground right here, which I believe they call it height 243, I believe. It's right in this region, but basically now the Russians control the tallest point in the entire area. So from here on out, everything going forward, the Russians are going to be looking downhill. It's a great advantage for scouting, for ATGM fire, mortar fire, artillery fire. You just kind of can see your enemy's movements, whereas the Russians will be on the high ground and potentially hidden from Ukrainian vision through most of their movements. So that capturing that hill is very important. The Ukrainians did not want to lose that hill specifically, but it has been lost. Yes, it's right on this tree line. So this tree line south of Novo Alexandrivka has been captured. Sorry about butchering those names. It's really hard. That's weird. You guys say weird things sometimes in chat. Okay. All right, just to the south, Deep State has confirmed this as well. Deep State kind of comes out every couple of days and does these massive updates, and sometimes they provide information that pro-Russian sources don't have yet, or they're hiding for OPSEC reasons or whatever. Novopokrovsk, the Russians seem to have captured almost the entirety of the town. There's still this area up against this reservoir right here, this pond. So in the coming days, we should see the Russians push in and capture this. This is significant because this is on the Ukrainian second line of defense. That second line of defense runs sort of down this way, but the Russians bypassed it when they made their way in toward Chitny. So this is a significant advance because it's along a defensive line, as well as the Russians are still moving in the direction of Sokhil. If they can force a breakthrough here and cause some issues in this area, it's going to open up their ability to push towards the ring road right here, which is what I've said for a long time is the primary goal. They are now 4 miles, so 8 or so kilometers away from the ring road, which is on the highway, which leads to Konstantinivka. Again, on the Chasiv Yar side, the Russians want to reach Stopochki. Again, this will allow for logistics into New York and Toretsk to be cut off, and these fortification cities to be surrounded, and a lot of pressure be applied to them. I'm going to bring up my presentation thing just so you guys can kind of see what I'm talking about. This is what I made as the Russian goal, I believe in April. I put out a video where I utilized this and I've just kind of kept it. You can see how the Russians have progressed into this area. Again, this area is moving slower than I think everybody expected. The Ukrainians are not eager to let this go at all. And you can see how the Russians continue to progress towards the ring road. I made it the entire highway area just because once the Russians get behind the few defensive fortifications here, this area really starts to open up in terms of Ukrainian defenses just not existing. Down here south of or north of Umansk, the Russians have made an advance on approach to Novosilka, Persha, and they have also made an advance through these fields just west of Semenkivka. All right. Down here in Krasnohorivka, just a small map change. I think this happened a while ago, but the Russians have been geolocated along this railway and in this southern little area. So it is now captured by the Russians. You can see how that sort of changes the map a little bit and kind of bulkens up the flank of this Russian grouping in Krasnohorivka. I think that they brought in a couple territorial defense brigades to try to stabilize the situation here, and they've been chewing through the territorial defense in this region. So the movement has been slower. But again, the Russians kind of stop pushing in areas and then start pushing in other areas until the Ukrainians have been forced out of that area. All right, down here in the south, the Russians have advanced again towards the 0532 highway. Guys, we have seen a ton of movement in the southern Donetsk area. I fully expect this to be one of the major focal points of any Russian offensive over the summer, any major Russian offensives if the situation for Ukraine deteriorates significantly. We did see a counterattack through this orange field. I like to talk about it because I like this orange field. A Bradley group came in and laid down suppressing fire on this tree line. Ukrainians disembarked and entered the tree line. No telling if there were Russians in the tree line at the time, but as far as we can tell from the video, the Ukrainians succeeded in holding this position, so I gave them a slight map update here. All right. Other than that, I think we are done with the map. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to record the demonetized video for Patreon tonight. So if you guys have been enjoying those, be on the lookout. That should be up tomorrow morning, I imagine. I'm hoping that we get some footage from the ongoing strike. If not, then it'll still be good. We still got a bunch of days of stuff to talk about. So I'm just checking to see if there was any more strike updates. Probably Kinjal in the direction of Kiev, approaching Kiev region. Let's can't see. Don't know if there's any explosions. They're kind of being quiet. Oh, yep. Loud in Kiev, loud in Kiev, loud in Sumy. Yep. Okay, we got a bunch of explosions. All right. So yeah, Kiev probably just got hit by uh, both ballistic cruise missiles and Iskanders. So that is ongoing right now. That will be on the next live stream, probably tomorrow. Guys, I was out of town. A prior engagement that I had to make. I had a very good time, and I brought you guys some news, but I didn't get to do my live streams. I didn't record any videos, so if I wasn't on here for like 4 or 5 days, that's what was going on. But I tried to keep you guys updated. All right. I have a few articles I want to talk about, and then we can get to some of your guys' questions or whatever. Actually, I'm going to talk about a few things on Twitter. I just have two quick things to talk about. So we saw this Russian KH-101 cruise missiles are now utilizing cluster munition warheads. This greatly improves the effectiveness of these weapons against things like air defense systems and airfields. Anything that can be damaged by cluster munitions. This is now so any of these missiles that you're seeing come flying in the country tonight could be cluster munition variants if they are targeting airfields or air defense installations. So again, this basically levels the playing field for things like ATACMS. The Russians also use Iskander, which also has a cluster munition variant. So I mean that's more of the counter to the ATACMS, but this is just another tool in the Russian workbench now. Okay, let's go back to this. All right, so we did see an attack on a Russian Air Force base. The attack did target an Su-57. You can see that there is some sort of mesh canopy over the Su-57. I've said for a long time that they need to build installations at these air bases. I've said this for a long time. It's been one of my biggest criticisms of the Russian MOD. I don't know if this money is being stolen. I don't know if this money is being, if it's just not a priority because they don't think that I don't know what's going on. It's obvious that Ukraine is not going to stop doing this, and you might as well protect your aircraft and prevent your enemy from gaining valuable intel on your how you operate your aircraft out of their bases. You know the satellites are constantly watching. Why not put up at least visual covering? It doesn't even have to be anything overly significant. It just needs to be something that blocks satellite view. If they can do that, you know, even if the drones do target the right airfield, they might not target the actual spot that the planes are parked under because satellites only provide photos mostly, and every so often. So they don't usually catch a plane pulling in. They'll just see planes at the airfield, and they know if they land. We can see that there was a drone hit just here near the tail section. It looks like most of that explosion was directed this way. This explosion was in front of the mesh. It might have done damage. Fighter bombers said that they were qualifying the damage. Who knows what that means? It could be a crack in the canopy from shrapnel. The whole bottom section, front section of this plane could be riddled with shrapnel, and the whole airframe is just not worth flying anymore. Who knows? A lot of people were calling this fake. Until I see concrete evidence that this is a fake, I can see shadows on the ground. It doesn't look like a drawing. It looks real. It's under a canopy. I think that this was just another drone attack, and there's not much to be said about it. This is an issue that could have been fixed forever ago. It hasn't been fixed for whatever reason. Either they don't deem it as an important enough issue to do it, or there's something preventing it from getting done on the back end. Who knows? I'm hoping with the new Ministry of Defense that has come in, they will fix a lot of these issues, because a lot of the issues, a lot of the embarrassments that Russia suffers are very fixable. They're very, very easily fixed. So, yeah, we'll see. Again, I'm not saying that this is exactly what happened. I'm still waiting for higher resolution satellite photos. I think we got some, but Again, it was pretty inconclusive as to the damage. Okay. I'm going to take us over to. You can say fake all you want, but I would like you to present an argument. No, do I think the planes that are bombed are fake? No, I don't. I think that that is a real Su-57, and I really think he got targeted. Guys, why not? The drones are just programmed to hit a certain area, maybe. That's what they do, right? And you send a bunch of them, it's gonna happen. You can't stop all these drones. It's obvious that no side can stop all these drones. The U.S. can't do it in fucking peacetime against Iran, with Israel. So how are you going to do it with I mean peacetime? The U.S. is in peacetime. Israel isn't. How are you going to do it? With Ukraine utilizing an entire NATO's worth of resources in terms of drones being delivered and stuff like that, targeting information, everything like that. You're going to take hits, and to call everything fake is ridiculous, guys. The hits are going to happen. I've told you multiple times. ATACMs got delivered. It's hard to stop saturation attacks with ballistic missiles, guys. You're going to see S-300s and S-400s get destroyed. That's going to happen. You're going to see air bases get hit, and the way you think about it is there's a limited number of these weapon systems that can be delivered to Ukraine, and they are burning through them. They did the same thing with Storm Shadows. They do the same thing with HIMARS. They're going to do the same thing with ATACMs. They do the same thing with everything that they're given. As soon as they get it, they utilize it very well, but they overutilize it, and then they run out of it, and we don't see it anymore. Or the Russians get much better adapted to dealing with that threat, and it becomes less of an issue for the Russians. That's how you have to look at this. It's the Russians are not going to nuke somebody for using an ATACMs on Russia proper, right? That's not going to happen. Don't expect that. The Russians aren't going to do some crazy anything. They're going to enforce the red lines at the end of the war. And those red lines are going to be where the Russian Federation stops. ATACMs are a limited and finite weapon. They still produce them, but they don't produce them in the numbers that Ukraine is using them. Ukraine is using like 5 or 6 ATACMs at least for every one of these strikes, and I've seen 4 or 5 strikes on Crimea this week in like the last 7 days. That's significant weapons usage. They can't sustain that. They can't. They're getting their hits in now. I see people talking about, oh, they're preparing for the F-16s. Guys, what are the F-16s going to be firing? Are they going to be getting Tauruses? I mean, maybe like that might be a possibility, but we have seen a complete drop off in Storm Shadow and Scalp cruise missile strikes. We don't see them hardly ever anymore. And part of that, I think, is this Russian targeting of the air bases where the Su-24s fly out of. I think they've actually destroyed quite a few airframes. I've seen some iffy reports. I'm not going to, claim that that's what's happening, but they could have also just ran out of missiles. This happens. Like it's not a finite resource, right? So, yeah, bro, this guy, like people just talking about this is so weird. That's so weird that you would relate me with that. It's just so weird. That's such a weird thing. All right. The Su-24s have been destroyed. Yeah, I've heard that, and these strikes have been heavily concentrated on the bases that the Su-24s are using. So this is a realistic possibility. Yeah, it's not an infinite resource. They do not have infinite ATACMs. They do not have infinite Su-24s, anything like that. No, you're weird. That guy's still talking to me. You know what? I'll just do this. Bye. All right. USA dollars are an infinite resource. Yeah, but you know what? Dollars don't birth men that are of fighting age, which is what Ukraine needs. And money doesn't instantly build military-industrial complex factories that the U.S. doesn't have. So you can say, yeah, we have money, but money is just paper. If you don't actually have the ability to get it done, money doesn't help. Okay. I see. I'm trying to set up a cage match with Denny and Andrew. Ugh. I just kill myself before I even got in the cage. Um, I'm going to cover some articles real fast that I saw that I thought I would share. This was interesting. The U.S. lifts its weapons ban on Ukraine's Azov Brigade. Don't know really why they're doing this. This seems like such a ridiculous, pointless thing to do. The Azov Brigade is not that big anymore, especially. They're not doing a lot. They got chewed up outside of Avdiivka. I'm pretty sure they're getting chewed up in Kharkov now, I think is where they're at. So letting them utilize weapons just means basically we're going to allow Ukraine, we're going to allow the people in Ukraine who 10 years ago we deemed too far right, too Nazi affiliated, and too unhinged to give them weapons and allow them to use Western weapons because that might be a bad thing. Now everybody in Ukraine is just like Azov, I guess, is what they assume, or they. I don't know why they're doing this. It makes no sense because Azov is notoriously associated with Nazis. You go look at articles from BBC and New York Times back in the day. They talked about how Azov was like the bad part of Ukraine. These guys were the the right sector evil Nazi like guys, right? They have the swastikas tattooed on them, stuff like that. I mean, even their logo is so Nazi esque. They're wannabe Nazis. It's what they are. They're Ukrainian Slavs who are pretending to be German Nazis. It's the weirdest shit ever. Anyway, besides that, it's very interesting that the U.S. decides to do this now. I don't know why. Again, there's not. This won't make a difference to the war. This just looks like we're saying, okay, the Nazis are okay now, even though 10 years ago we said that they weren't okay because they did a little facelift and identity change. Now they're not what they were before the start of the war. Ridiculous, but it's very interesting. The U.S. just does not seem to care about its image in any way anymore. So I'll just read this. The U.S. has lifted its long-standing ban on weapons supplies and training to Ukraine's Azov Brigade, whose origins were mired in controversy over alleged links to far-right groups. Yeah, you were the one, BBC. You were the one alleging it. That was your story. Did you take this from your own 2014 memoirs? Because that's exactly what this is. A State Department spokesman also mired in controversy. Yeah, they're Nazis. That's not mired in controversy. That's just what they are. The wording here is like, how do we make this Nazi group sound okay? They were mired in controversy. Yeah, burning people alive and killing Russian speaking people mercilessly and viciously in 2015, 2016, stuff like that. Yeah, no, it's all good. It's all good. They're fine now because they were just mired in controversy. And their alleged links. Oh, you mean the Nazi tattoos? Do you mean them all worshiping Stefan Bandera, somebody who propagated the Holocaust? Oh, this is it's crazy. Just their readers are just mentally handicapped people who don't have the time of day to actually understand news. They don't have the time of day to research what they read. It doesn't matter because this is garbage. This is hot vomit right here in a way to cover it's Nazi apologism right here. This is crazy. Alleged links to far right groups. Yeah, you alleged those links and they allege them with their literally their tattoos and their worshiping of Nazi persons. Okay. The Azov Brigade, now a unit within Ukraine's National Guard, ooh, very changed, hailed the move, saying Russian lies receive devastating blows. Yeah, like kneecapping people and stabbing people through the eye and stuff like that. Yeah, Russian lies receive devastating blows. If you guys don't know, there are multiple early war crime videos that came out of Russian POWs being kneecapped, stabbed, their throats slit. One I saw got a knife through the eye. I've seen a lot of war crimes, very, very bad stuff. They're available. This is not secret information. You can go see this. Everybody likes to memory hole it. The Georgians, in particular, were very, very ruthless with their treatment of POWs. So it was kind of bad. And it's kind of what set a lot of Russians against Ukrainians because at the beginning, there was a lot of unknowns about the SMO, right? But as soon as you start seeing your boys getting kneecapped and stuff for no real good reason as POWs, and it kind of hardens people's hearts against your claims of being a free democracy, trying to uplift Western values in Ukraine. And they are uplifting Western values. What I've come to figure out is Western values don't exist. Western values are just hypocrisy and irony all wrapped into one. Okay. Next article. U.S. pushes for $50 billion loan to Ukraine, utilizing frozen Russian assets ahead of the G7 summit. Okay. So this is a big old mistake. I don't know if you guys know how people like to invest their money and like to keep their money in certain places, but they like that money to be rather protected. They don't want their money stolen if, say, they do something that the US disagrees with, right? If you sign up to being an international bank, you are going to be an international bank, right? And if you don't act like a bank acts and you steal people's money, the rich people, poor people get their money stolen all the time by banks, but the rich people who keep the banks alive, they don't want their money stolen. This is what this shows. It shows the second you get on our bad side, we are going to take your money, your frozen assets. I think this is the profits from Russia's frozen assets, actually. And they're saying because it's profits that were made under our financial system, it's not technically going to go to Russia, so we can use it. This is stealing money. Nobody sees it the way they see it. They're trying to find any way to find free money to give more equipment and money to Ukraine. Got to keep this thing going. This is a horrible look to anybody saying, "Oh, I'm thinking about investing in the U.S." This is a nightmare. This is the absolute last thing you want to do, and they're going to go ahead with it. They've been talking about this for 2 years. They've been trying to make it work, and there is no legal way to make it work, right? There's no legal way to have this work out. But they're going to do it anyway. They're going to loophole their way through this, do some illegal shit. They're going to steal money, and it is going to reflect horribly on the future investments that foreign nations make in the United States. Let's see. U.S. officials are racing against the clock to finalize an agreement that could provide some $50 billion in loans to Ukraine using profits from frozen Russian assets, a top priority ahead of President Joe Biden's meeting with G7 leaders. G7, useless, in Italy this week. But the 7 nations have not yet reached a final consensus. Yeah, because some of these nations realize that if they start stealing other nations' money, people are not going to be so comfortable giving them money. And there are some nations in Europe that basically are only kept up through this, right? So they need people to have faith in their financial systems and their ability to protect their money. That's what this destroys that faith. The UK, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, and Japan to sign off on the plan that it views as vital to giving Ukraine a shot at turning around its prospects on the battlefield. Again, money is great. Money is endless. When you print it, it doesn't matter. You can do whatever you want with it. You make it up. It is what it is. Money does not produce missiles. Money does not produce manpower for Ukraine. You can funnel billions and trillions of dollars into Ukraine. It will not change the situation on the battlefield at all. At all, unless this war goes somehow for 3 more years and these factories that are being built right now actually get built and start producing what Ukraine needs. But they have to survive 3 more years of this. Does anybody in here honestly think that Ukraine can survive that? Because I don't particularly. Okay, the ultimate goal, sources say, is to iron out some of the thorniness financing details. It's fucking illegal. That's what that means right there. Man, these people writing this are just wordsmiths, dude. They should get into the rap game because iron out some of the thorniest financing details in the coming days. Yeah, how do we do this because it's illegal? That's what that means. So that an agreement can be announced as part of the G7 leaders' communique this week. Again, why do you have to use the word communique? Trying to be fancy. But questions about the modalities of such a program include the precise form of uh, disbursement and repayment assurances because it's illegal, among others, are still in the process of being worked out. So, guys, the US is just trying to break their own rules because they're losing. And that's what the US does. When I talked about that hypocrisy and irony of a lot of this, a lot of these Western values, it's exactly like this. We're losing, so we're going to break our own rules, and we don't care how it affects us. That's crazy. This is why we're losing, guys. This is why we're losing because we won't admit that we're losing. We keep pretending that we're winning, and we're just going to keep losing off the back of that. All right, get some questions in if you guys have questions. Get some questions in quick. Yeah, the U.S. just passes laws to make it legal, which works for dumb citizens who are uneducated and don't have a brain between their ears to think about what is being yelled at them. But people who do know, I mean, we see exactly what's going on. What is AKM mapping, guys? Go follow AMK mapping on Twitter. He does good work. Scott, what is the origin story of your profile picture? Oh, the dog. I just like service dogs, and I thought that picture was it was just kind of the timing. I would have probably just chosen something else, but I like dogs, and I was like, I like that dog has his eyes blurred out. I think that is some Kino shit right there. And I had just got my a previous account that we got deleted. That it was just like my personal private account. It got deleted because I was having an argument about Ukraine. I didn't say anything bad even, but I just got mass reported, and then that account went away. So I was like, "Hey, I got to pick a new profile picture. What do I want to pick?" And I was like, "This dog is sweet looking." So, yo, Scott, WEW, you're back because regardless how much you and Brian hammer the points, we're uncertain gauging UA's greatest counteroffensive in the Kharkiv plus what exactly so-called non-peace meat. Non-peace meat. All right. Let me just read this. Yeah. They're not accomplishing anything in the Kharkov region. So they're not accomplishing anything before his meeting. I think that was the goal. I think they're now starting to realize that they're not going to be able to accomplish anything, and it's just going to double up. I don't know if you meant to do this twice, but you did this twice. If you didn't, let me know and I will refund that for you. But I appreciate you, brother. Was Scott do 10 push-ups? No. Do 10 push-ups for the losers out there. Later, maybe? Oh shit, it's AMK mapping. Yeah, go follow him, guys. A lot of people think we're the same person. So, AMK mapping, if you look like me, you're one handsome guy. Congratulations. Where do you read those questions? Do you manage a YouTube channel too? Yeah. So my YouTube channel is Kalibrated. I live stream to both. So if you're on Twitter, I think you can only see Twitter comments. If you're on YouTube, you can see YouTube comments. I think you can also see Twitter comments. But yeah, I'm doing both right now. So. Kalibrated, what do you think about the Cuban Missile Crisis 2 highly regarded Boogaloo narrative, and that the Kharkov incursion is the big summer offensive talk going around? So the Kharkov, I don't think that that Kharkov offensive was the commitment of hardly any reserves. I think it was a very smart choice by the Russians to pull Ukrainian reserves away from the east. I'm under the impression that the Russians are just going to keep doing this slow grinding until the Ukrainians break. And I think we're starting to see the Ukrainians just breaking more and more frequently all over the place. That's why the Russian gains have increased significantly. Anybody who's mapping this war knows that the Russians are advancing now across the map faster than they have over the last 2 years since early 2022. So, yeah, some big advances coming, but steady advances. Thoughts on Macron going to general election? I think he is at the point where he knows the situation's about to get way worse in Europe, particularly France. I think it's going to get much worse. So it's like a do or die moment. This is probably the last peaceful moment Macron and his party can have to try to win a general election before things get bad. He might just be under a lot of pressure and almost being forced into doing this. I don't know, but I don't think it's going to end good either way. Who knows though? He could pull out a victory and reassert himself before things get bad. Is the French Napoleon looking to get out of this shit show? Dude, I don't know. I don't know what he's doing. I don't know if it's just a big bluff, or if it's like this is just the next stage of like the conflict. Is we're just going to start to see French and European troops in Ukraine more often. It does not bode well. Yes, it does appear that Kinzhals have striked Kiev. I don't know, ACAM mapping, did you, or AMK, I keep saying that wrong. Did you see if the strikes were due to Kinzhals? I'm curious. Macrolian. That's funny. I thought I saw another question. Yeah. Yeah. So there was a Kinjal strike, which that is an important strike. If they're using Kinjals, it's something time sensitive and something that they want to defeat air defense with. Combined strike with Kinjals and cruise missiles. Yeah. So I wonder what was hit. I wonder if we'll ever know what was hit. The censorship is quite strong. So Zelensky is a dictator by definition. He is. Did my mic disconnect? No. Okay. I think we're good. All right. By definition, he is a dictator. So whether you believe it or not, whether you think elections are good for Ukraine, which I don't particularly think that, I don't think he has an option. I don't think he has an option from his Western backers. I don't think he has an option domestically. He either goes to jail or he dies, or he lives in exile, which is not an option for the West. So I don't really think Zelensky is a dictator necessarily by choice. I think if you gave him the opportunity to run away right now, if you said you can take your money and you can go live your life somewhere else, I think he would do it in a heartbeat. I don't think he has that choice. Azov funding restored. Yeah, but their ranks with manpower are not. So a lot of the units now are being filled with fresh territorial units or fresh territorial defense guys. I saw that the 79th Brigade, Air Assault Brigade, was complaining about how they received some reserves and they were very excited. And the guys were basically fresh off the truck. They hadn't had training, and they were told that they needed to train these guys on site, basically, which is pretty wild. All right, guys, that takes us to an hour. I think that's where I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much. I am going to go ahead and record that Patreon video right now or in the coming hours. So be on the lookout for that tomorrow. It should be up before noon tomorrow. And my live stream will be at, ooh, do I want to do it at 12? I want to do it at 12, but I think I might have a commitment at that time. You guys will know tomorrow. Be safe. Take care. Love you all. And remember, calibrated something or another catchphrase. Bye, guys.